Welcome to Delightfully Dysfunctional, a podcast about navigating the emotions of the human condition and the challenges that come with it. I'm Kaylani Persian Mason, a psychotherapist and life coach with James Timmons, an ever-curious human. This is not a replacement for mental health therapy. Please seek out mental health care if that's what you're needing. This is an opportunity for self-healers to dive deep and understand more about themselves. Welcome back, Delightful Humans. I'm Kaylani, and this is James, and you are here for Delightfully Dysfunctional. And we are excited once again to be here at our table, the table of truth.
Studio day, our favorite day.
Studio day. It's funny, I had not anticipated in the podcast how often talking about Minnesota in my hometown would come up. It has come up in almost every episode, hasn't it?
Yeah, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of you, so.
It is. It totally is. And I think that's why it's coming up. It was a big part of my childhood, and it was where I think my journey on my healing journey where it began. But this is a funny fact about Red Lake Falls, Minnesota.
Okay.
Several years ago now, there was a reporter from the Huffington Post who wrote an article on the worst place to live in the country.
Oh.
And my hometown, my county, was picked as the worst place to live in the country.
Really?
Based on, I think it was like topography and climate and such, and like access to resources. I think those were the factors. I should look it up. I'm kind of remembering from like years ago when it was first published. Anyway, so the hometown, they were all like, you need to come visit us. Like, you don't understand the magic of our small town. And the guy totally went to visit and got like a tour and like learned what Minnesota Nice is all about. We are hospitable people. And the man, the last I heard, he like uprooted his life and moved to Red Lake Falls, Minnesota, like a freaking rom-com.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah. I mean, someone will have to update me if I'm wrong because I don't live there anymore. So some of my information is outdated. But isn't that's funny and
cute?
That is
like a rom-com. Yeah, that could be a show. You know, to that Huffington Post reporter, I would like to nominate the Tri-Cities for lamest place in America.
Yeah.
Because I would say the people are great.
We live in Tri-Cities, Washington, which is 3 cities that are all very close. And there are some really interesting things about this area. Like, this is the economy for our area is fueled by the Hanford site, which is where it's
one of the atomic bombs.
Yes, like that's where, was it uranium?
I don't know.
Anyways, one of the things that are needed for the atomic bomb was created. I feel like I'm going to make some local people upset, but from an outside perspective, the Richland High mascot is bonkers to me.
Oh, the Bombers?
It is the Richland High Bombers, and it is a mushroom cloud, and it is bonkers to me. So bonkers. And I will only say that much. You can interpret that however you want. Maybe it's bonkers amazing in your mind, but it's bonkers.
It's bonkers.
And then we are also in the desert of Washington, which most people don't know that Washington has a desert. I think Washington is the state that has the most climates than any other state because we have like the rainforest, coastal, then we have the mountains and the little known desert of Washington. So we don't have the big trees and the mountains that people picture when they think of the Pacific Northwest.
The thing is, though, we have a beautiful river that runs right through here that is just taken over by the Army Corps of Engineers back in the 40s because one time it flooded once. And so then nobody's allowed to build cool stuff on the river. So it's just this lame river. And like okay, I'm sorry. I've thought a lot about this. I even made a video a couple of years back about how lame it is here, and it like went viral in the Tri-Cities. Like everyone,
in the Tri-Cities, the Tri-Cities knows of its lameness.
Yeah, and so like okay. So here's the best way I could break it down for you: is that Hanford, if you go to like Seattle, like the Boeing and all the industry, people used to just move right next to their job and walk to work. So then you had this major city, and then the suburbs. But since Hanford has to be remote, you can only travel 40 minutes or whatever to get there. And so then like all the Tri-Cities where everyone lives is suburbs, and that's it. And so when you go to suburbs, there's no culture. There's nothing.
Yeah,
like,
it's a sprawling suburb here for sure, and yeah, and it's partially because of the 3 cities too. It's not like one downtown. We have 3 mini little downtowns and stuff. It's unique, but I will say, no one likes where they grew up, and this is where you grew up. And
I grew up on the west side.
Oh, did
so
you?
moving over here, I was just like, you guys should go see the rest of the world.
Yeah, you do know what's going on over there.
Yeah,
but I mean. I don't want to bash my hometown, but it was really, but like Red Lake Falls, it was really nice to come here where like seasons come or seasons when they're supposed to come. I had to wait until May or June for it to stop snowing sometimes in Minnesota. Like that's a big perk. The climate is not trying to kill us. Perhaps the radiation is, but like we don't have tornadoes and blizzards like I lived through in Minnesota. So, or like I lived so rural. If you forgot something from the grocery store, like you'd have to drive 30 miles to go get it. Or it's like 30 miles to get to the nearest movie theater, which only has 1 or 2 screens.
Oh.
So there's things about like accessibility in the Tri-Cities where 24/7 I can go to the grocery store and get what I want.
That's true.
Where I'm like, all right, not so bad.
Okay, yes, I was very negative on it just now. I mean, I do love it here. That's why I live here, and but it's for the people, mostly. But and we're close enough to travel to like really entertaining places. But again,
it leaves some things to be desired.
Yeah,
especially if you're single.
Yeah, it's hard if
which
you're
is
single.
my reality right now. But
it did get voted one of the worst places to be single, James.
Okay,
it's a great place to make a family. If you want to move, contact James Timmons.
I have a family, part-time.
But you sell houses.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, I see.
If you want to move and start a family, contact James.
James doesn't. Not because I'm not whoring you out, James. I'm trying to get you some business.
If you want to move out here and make babies, hit me up. That's what I thought you were saying.
I picked up on the real estate thing right away.
That was great.
See, that's how terrible a realtor I am. My mind wasn't even there.
Oh, I love it.
But no, for real, if you want to make babies.
If you want to make baby or buy a house.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, welcome once again for joining us. Before we get too dysfunctional, we'll reel it in. Today is about healing and like trying to figure out where to start. Healing 101. I think so often you might have a knowing internally before you even utter it out loud that something needs to. You're still laughing.
I'm still laughing because of that.
Okay.
Because that was that segue. Okay, I'm sorry. I need to focus. Continue. I'm sorry. Continue.
Do we need to do some deep breathing, James?
No. I just need to focus in.
Okay.
You guys got me thinking about making babies.
Oh, no.
Sorry. Okay. Healing 101.
Healing 101. So often we might have like an internal knowing that something isn't aligned with us or that there's healing that needs to be done and we're not sure where to start, or we might be fearful of where to start. So this is hopefully a powerful topic for you as you're navigating that, or if you're navigating that. One thing that I know to be true is that it doesn't matter at what point in your life it happens. I do think that for every human, there comes a point when they realize that the way that they've been operating needs to change, that they need to have some humility, that they need to heal, that they need to take accountability, and that can come in little realizations, or it can hit you in the face, smack you real hard. And we don't know when that could happen. I think it's actually a huge benefit when it happens earlier in your life so that you're not wasting time and in a position where perhaps there aren't relationships that can be mended, or there's not time where you have a second act or a third act.
Yeah.
So if you're in that space, welcome. I think it's where you need to be. And it's not a bad place to be, even if it's uncomfortable. I think it's a really powerful place. So when you've spoken to, I guess, the moments, a big moment for you of when you were starting to realize and start to heal Was that realization scary for you?
Which moment are you referring to?
Well, you talk a lot about the last few years and the challenges of the last few years. So there was a moment where you realized the way you'd been operating wasn't working.
Yeah.
And that a radical shift was needed to happen.
Yeah.
And what was that moment of realization like for you?
Well, I mean, the word that is front and center in my mind right now is grief.
Mhm.
And so, because, the life that I had worked so hard to build that I like dismantled with my own hands, there was just so many places where I grieved, and I didn't realize that I was grieving in the time. But then I went to a mental health facility for 2 weeks, and they kind of broke it down for us what grief is. And then I remember thinking, oh, that's what I'm experiencing right now, and when I started to understand grief and that it's a process and like a really painful process, it allowed me to sort of be more patient and allow like this, I guess, the self-development to like emerge. And and then that was really helpful because I noticed that part of grief is there's that bargaining phase where you become really impulsive and you want to like scrap all your progress and go back to the thing that you were doing because there was an emotional attachment to it, and I did that. I would call it a relapse. And so I'm kind of speaking like vaguely, but I would try to revert back to my old patterns that were self-destructive.
That's a really great example too, because that decision to heal does mean a giving up of something that was scratching an itch, or maybe filling. I think it like filling a need inauthentically or not. I want to be careful with my words. I think that when I have to untherapize them. This is what I want to say in my therapy terms, but it's not what makes sense to people. Our maladaptive behaviors can cause a lot of problems, and that we're going to have to like shift and refocus. Maladaptive means that when we were raised, when we grow up, there are things that are hardwired in because our brain cells are changing and forming, and the experiences in our childhood are more impactful. So even though our past doesn't define us, it does influence us. And I think a lot of people think, past is the past, leave it behind, whatever happened in childhood, whatever. And it is very much a piece of the equation. So if someone had people-pleasing behaviors that started in childhood, that's going to be a really strong inclination they have to pull them in that way and to break apart from that, to say, I'm going to break up with that unhealthy trait, quality, whatever. It's difficult, and there can even be a grief within that, because how do you live? What if that's the only way that you knew how to live and find fulfillment or validation was from someone else or from this outside source? So there's a fear of vulnerability, a fear of just uncertainty. What does that future look like if not using these tools that I've developed? But they're not healthy tools and they're not serving you anymore. So all of that was to explain maladaptive, but I just mean giving up the things that for so long made sense to you based on your childhood when you were surviving. But when you're an adult in survival mode and you don't need to be, it's not cute. That's when unhealthy patterns show up. That's the maladaptive behaviors. So that's my therapist rambling there when it comes to that piece. But you noticed those things and said, I can't keep following this pattern that pulls me in this direction. I need to change the way that I'm doing things, or maybe even the way I'm thinking about things.
Well, because I knew that the only way forward was to like rebuild my life in this new reality. but then there was always that constant temptation to try to go salvage the destroyed the stuff that I had destroyed, but it wasn't available to me to salvage,
Yeah.
And so and there were some really awful relationships that I was a part of, as I shared before, that I would try to return back to as like an addiction almost. And so anyway, but I just noticed that grief is a huge. We can't talk about this without talking about grief.
Yes. Yeah. I'll share a little bit of my personal story of healing as well. After my divorce, I really had to sit with, why did I stick with this thing that wasn't working for so long? Like, what kept me here? And a lot of it was, it was fear. It was fear of the uncertainty of what that next step would be. And it was a grief because even though I knew the writing was on the wall, I still cared about this person. And the idea of not having them in my life felt really sad, because you can still care for a toxic person. It gets complicated, but it happens, right? It happens a lot. And I had to reflect on my childhood and the things that got me to a place that, like, why would I have allowed this type of behavior? Why would I have stuck around for X, Y, and Z? That isn't what I would have recommended my best friend to do, but I thought that it was okay for me, you know? And I had to address my people pleasing in those moments. And it's a grief because when you decide to level up, when you decide to not deal with that kind of behavior anymore, that I'm not going to do that bottom feeder behavior, I'm rising up. There are people in your life who will feel uncomfortable by that. And so my grief was about, I'm not going to be able to maybe connect with certain people in my life the same way, because now I've realized I've been people pleasing for them, even though I love them and I care about them. And if I'm dedicated to not doing that anymore, they're going to notice a shift. And I had to kind of grieve the loss of what that meant, that me becoming a better version of me also meant grieving people that I love.
Yeah. Yeah. As you're explaining that, I'm just thinking about my ex-wife, and because I was pretty brutal with how my treatment of that marriage and our relationship at the end there, as I shared with my affair. And I remember she reached a point where, because I was the toxic one in that context, and she reached a point of just like, no, dude, that's the straw that broke the camel's back. And I remember almost like feeling like, no, but you owe me one more chance because we're married, but it's like I had been so negligent, and like to this day my heart breaks because I was a piece of shit. And so like just knowing that I subjected her to that